Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take, and I also got a little Joan with me. Today we're going to talk about Michael Moore. What happened to Michael Moore? I don't know. It seems to me that he has really changed. Um, Initially when he came out with Roger and Me, I saw that movie. I see a lot of art house movies. That was kind of an art house movie. Um, it's a documentary, but it played in the art houses, and it's a great little film. Uh, you know, it's really Michael taking the fight from the little guy to the big guy. That's what it was all about, and he cultivated that image, which for a time seemed to be genuine. Then he peaked with Fahrenheit 9/11, which I thought was a good movie. Later, it was revealed a couple of scenes maybe were a little manipulated, but that's forgivable in a documentary, I think, to a certain extent. Um, but definitely with Fahrenheit 9/11, he was on the right side of history because Bush was a terrible, terrible president. He really was. Uh, the Bush administration's damage still is with us today. We're still in the Middle East. We're still dealing with the fallout from a war that we were lied in, and that was an important issue that that needed exposure. Still needs more exposure. Still needs it. Um, then it just seemed like Moore became more obsessed with Democrats, and their issues. Now, Sicko, uh, which I saw, and I saw a lot of his stuff, um, didn't seem to resonate. And I think part of the reason it didn't resonate is, he goes to Cuba and he shows this amazing, oh, you can get all the health care you want in Cuba, even in Cuba, you get free health care. But there's a different reality in Cuba. There is, yeah, some people, they get health care there. It's Cuban doctors, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. They're not as good as American doctors. And the problem is they don't have the resources and they run out of them. So if you're unfortunate and poor, you're just not going to get any health care. You might expect it. And if you catch that, during an emergency, you're screwed. And yes, the United States has a huge problem with the healthcare here. But, the question is, would you rather be in debt or dead? I don't think there's much of a choice there. Now, that may not be fair, but the reality is about debt, with regards to hospital bills, they can only hunt down so much money before they just, you know, cut you a deal. It's annoying. It's terrible. I certainly was one to be in debt and could be in debt in the future because I'm always broke. But, you want your health care to be good. You don't want to be in a hospital that runs out of the drugs you need to live. And that's the issue with universal health care. There's only so much resources to go around medically. And then it becomes a priority of who gets what. And you'd like to think that the most sick people get it, but that's not what happens. So Sicko, to me, didn't drill down far enough. It wasn't particularly honest. It just felt like a commercial for, hey, everybody, let's get riled up and get universal health care and push for that. And that's what a lot of his movies have become. Certainly what was it, Fahrenheit 11/9, about Trump. That was just, to me, strictly partisan. I didn't see that one, but the clips I saw, I didn't want to see it because, to take such partisan stances, to me, really was different from the message of a Roger and Me. Roger and me was, let me protect the little guy. Let me protect the working people. The working people that Michael Moore used to protect voted for Trump. They want him. Now, he can disagree with them, but, you can't pretend that you're still a representative of those people if you are so partisan as to disagree with them. You have to make your case. Now, he tried. He did everything he could to try to make his case, but he didn't do it. And, I'm reminded of Paul Joseph Watson did a video about how conservatism is the new punk. And it's true to a certain extent. And I think conservatism and liberalism have sort of flopped places in terms of the mindset of people. Now it's becoming the working class who are looking to the Republicans, and the Democrats are going to the elites and the moneyed interest. So as that transition happens, Michael's just stuck in the old paradigm. But what Paul Joseph Watson did in his video is he showed an interview with Johnny Rotten on like Good Morning Britain or something, and he's still a celebrity there and still appears on TV. And basically, after the Brexit vote, which is their version of Trump basically in the UK, the working people voted for Brexit, and Johnny maybe didn't agree with it, but when they asked him what he thought of the vote, he said, "I'm for the working people, and if that's what they want, then that's what we should have." And that really told you something about Johnny. He is really for the working people. He trusts them. I think Michael Moore doesn't trust them, and that's what's made him become an elitist. So there was a recent interview with him in Rolling Stone where he basically called all the Trump voters white, male, angry, racist. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And, here he is sitting in Rolling Stone, getting an interview basically whenever he wants because he's Michael Moore. He's got his baseball cap on and his jacket like he's still been wearing since Roger and me. And now it just feels like an image now. It's not him. He's a millionaire. He's very rich. He has multiple homes. And but he's still playing at being, I'm the poor guy who helps you out. On my little iPad here, there's another interview with Michael Moore over at Democracy Now! And he's predicting the Trump 2020 victory if the vote happened now. But he is, saying that the Democrats can't, or we can't give them another Hillary. Michael is partially responsible for Hillary because he promoted her. First he called her a warmonger and all sorts of terrible things, but then he turned around and said, well, this is a good person. No, that's wrong. And most people, they kind of sense that that's wrong, in my view. Hillary Clinton, there's a lot of things about her you could say maybe that are positive. I wouldn't call her a good person. She's not a Mother Teresa. She's not a charitable person. This is a pretty corrupt operator who works in Washington, D.C. Now, you can argue she's still better than Trump, and that's a tough argument to make to me, but, Hillary Clinton has, I don't know how much evidence you need, Michael, to show that Hillary Clinton's got a pile of bodies that she's standing on. I mean, she was... one of the things that shocks me about Michael Moore, too, is, WikiLeaks came out with all this amazing information about the 2016 election. Where is his brain on that? This was an insight into the Clinton campaign. And it's very clear that she was behind the push to bomb the hell out of Libya, and look at what that did. I mean, Libya's an absolute wreck, and this is mere months after Gaddafi was supposedly reformed, and Republicans from the United States, I believe it was Lindsey Graham, I think it was the three amigos, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and I guess Lieberman went too, and proclaimed Gaddafi, oh, he's reformed. Which, that was probably BS too, but the fact that Republicans did that and then the Democrats turned around and bombed the hell out of the country, that sounds very suspicious to me. It doesn't sound like, well, we had to get in on, the terrible things. I mean, you literally just had senators go down there and proclaim the guy okay. So what went wrong in that process in a few months? At the same time, you had, France and Italy chomping at the bit to get some of that oil. So there's a lot of suspicion in my mind about the whole Libyan cause, and the end result is just terrible. You have a failed state full of weapons that disappeared, ended up in the hands of the Syrian al-Nusra Front, which, a lot of pundits talk about. That was the cause. I mean, where is Michael Moore on all these issues? Where is he on these world issues that seem to dovetail right into what he's talking about? So when you talk about Hillary Clinton being a good person, how do you square that with a Libyan state that has brought back slavery, and that she's at least partially responsible, if not fully? How do you not bash Obama for that? He was president. I mean, certainly if you're going to say, well, that's Hillary wasn't in charge, well, you should be saying something about Obama. I mean, when you say nothing negative about your side, you're just essentially partisan. And that, I feel, is what he's become. And this latest interview at Democracy Now! Here, Dougie, come on. Just seems to be more of the same. He's saying that he predicts the Democratic candidate would win the popular vote by 4 to 5 million. I don't know what leads him to say that, and what that means. It seems to be more nonsense about eliminating the Electoral College directly, excuse me. And that would very much hurt the people in the Midwest that he supposedly supports. It would hurt people in the center of the country, because then it would just be LA, New York, Chicago, Philly, all the major cities, Chicago. Did I say Chicago? It would be all the major population centers picking the president again and again and again. Until it was so bad that finally they would throw the Democrats out. And really, the Democrats, just like the Republicans, they have their excesses. California is an excess of the Democratic Party. It is destroying itself. Virginia is heading to become an excess of the Democratic Party very quickly. The gun laws there are pretty draconian. They are planning to throw people in jail, because the Virginia legislature not only approved all these gun laws, they've also approved a giant increase in their corrections budget in anticipation of throwing people in jail for their guns. Now, this is a state that was fairly red, then kind of purple, and suddenly blue. And so the gun culture there was pretty strong, and they just want to flip a switch. This is not going to go well. And the people who have guns in Virginia aren't a bunch of elitist rich guys. They are working class people, hunters. Virginia could be pretty rural in places. So I wouldn't expect Michael to do a documentary about that, because he's very anti-gun. He did Bowling for Columbine, and it was a movie about how easy it is to get guns. But if you have this situation brewing in Virginia, to me that is a hot topic that is part of the gun issue, that would be something to cover. Uh, so I'm just kind of appalled by Michael Moore now. It's really sad to me. Seemed like a guy who fought for the little guy, and now it just seems like he's a partisan part of the Democrats. That's where he's sort of thrown his hat in, and I don't mean to say that like he's an evil guy. I think he's just been, he's been rich for a long time now, and when you're rich, you're just out of touch. You're out of touch with real people and real issues, and you have all this time to sit around and pontificate. And it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily the smartest thing to do if you're going to be a documentary filmmaker and teach people things. Because that's what documentaries do. They teach people, or show different aspects of society and the world that maybe you don't know or see, and it should drill down into the truth. There was a documentary done by a woman who she wanted to interview the men's rights organization, and by the end of the documentary, she came to realize that, these guys weren't a bunch of men haters, and that they had issues were worthy of people talking about, and for that she was vilified by left-leaning people who, won't accept. I think Michael should make a documentary about how, the left has become so intolerant of other ideas that they don't talk. This was usually a trait reserved for religious people on the right. Now it seems that the left has definitely, become this way. But I think Michael has become this way too. And now, that he's just doing a bunch of interviews indicates to me, oh, well, I guess he's got some project coming out and he's starting to promote it. Getting back in the game, and he's going to wear his hat and his big jacket and look like hey, I'm just a normal schlub, and then get in his limo and go back to his mansion, I guess. I would say, Michael, if you wanted to do a real documentary, a documentary that people in the upper echelons would go absolutely berserk, I'd do a documentary about the Federal Reserve and all the damage it's done. Do a documentary about how it works, and I've always said that when Occupy Wall Street was out and they were outside of Goldman Sachs and Goldman Sachs guys were laughing at them, I said, yeah, that's really not going to do much, even though some of the libertarians supported the protest too. I mean, they had an issue, it definitely was crony capitalism, but if you wanted to strike at the heart of the problem with crony capitalism in this country, go to the Federal Reserve, protest there. They'll react. They'll freak the hell out. And they probably would have shot everybody if they had done that. And they would have arrested everybody, because those guys, the people in the know where the money is. The money's in the Federal Reserve. That's the heart of a lot of the corruption in the United States. So I await Michael Moore's drilling down into the economics of it. It's a very boring subject, but the damage and the results are pretty evident. So I suggest you do a documentary on that, Michael. See if your rich friends decide to fund that. I have a feeling somebody from some bank's going to go, I don't think we want to fund that.